Coming to you from beautiful downtown Santa Rosa, this is the Backstage Sonoma podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Hi, I'm Steve Roby, and this is Backstage Sonoma. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Bay Area jazz singer Marina Crouse to the show. In this episode, Marina shares the inspiration behind her latest album, Song of My Heart, a heartfelt tribute to boleros and rancheras of the mid-20th century. We'll also discuss her journey of embracing her Chicana heritage through music and get an exclusive preview of her upcoming performance at SF Jazz. So sit back and relax and enjoy this intimate conversation with one of the Bay Area's finest voices, Marina Crouse. Our show begins with Sabor a Mi. It's from Marina's 2018 debut album.
Tanto tiempo disfrutamos de este amor, nuestras almas se acercaron tanto así, que yo guardo tu sabor, pero tú llevas también sabor a mí. Si negaras mi presencia en tu vivir, bastaría con abrazarte y conversar. Tanta vida yo te di que por fuerza tienes ya sabor a mí. No pretendo ser tu dueña, no soy nada, yo no tengo vanidad. De mi vida doy lo bueno, soy tan pobre que otra cosa puedo dar. Pasará más de 1000 años y muchos más, yo no sé si tengamos la eternidad, pero allá tal como aquí en la boca llevarás sabor a mí. Muchos más, yo no sé si tengamos la eternidad, pero allá tal como aquí en la boca llevarás sabor a mí, sabor a mí.
That's Sabor a Mi from Marina Crouse's 2018 debut album. And Marina is my guest today. Hey, Marina, welcome to the show. So glad you could be here.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me today.
Marina, could you give us a brief overview of your musical career so far for our listeners who are new to your music?
It's not a super long story. I sang as a very young person. I studied classical music at the end of high school and in my early 20s. And then I had to step away from music for what I thought would be a little while. but ended up being a little more than 25 years. And then in 2014, I started looking at music again, at singing again. And by 2016, I had put myself in a position to have a band and really start again trying to have a music career. And so that's when I started singing in the Bay Area. And I've really just been very fortunate to be able to work with a lot of great musicians and explore some different kinds of music through different projects. It's not quite 10 years yet that I've been performing, but that's the short version of my background in music in the Bay Area. So I'm a late bloomer comparatively.
So glad you're a part of it now.
That's been great. I've been very lucky.
You've previously mentioned that your grandmother's record player played a big role in shaping your love for this type of music. What's one memory from those times that still resonates with you when you perform?
As you mentioned, that my last album was an album with boleros and some traditional music I heard listening to this big stereo in my grandmother's house. And when I do those shows that's dedicated just to boleros, I talk a lot about the connection I have with this music and my family. I'm a fourth generation Chicana, which really just means that the last person to come from Mexico in my family was in the 1800s. And some part of my family was already here, even when it was Mexico, before it became the U.S. And so for me, the music was so connected to the space of my grandmother's house and family gatherings, and which I think is true for a lot of people. I meet a lot of people who come to the shows and know the music and grew up hearing the music too. So it really holds a very special place in my heart for when I was a kid and growing up, listening to all this music and the memories I have of my grandmothers and all the family celebrations. It's been a really interesting journey because when I grew up, I didn't actually know how to speak Spanish because of I'm fourth generation. And often when immigrants have several generations somewhere, people don't speak the same language as the original people who came from another country. But I ended up studying Spanish in college and actually became a Spanish professor. That's my daytime job. So for me to be able to sing this music now in Spanish is really like rediscovering everything with fresh eyes. And it's really deep in the meaning for me of this music.
So learning Spanish and embracing your Chicana heritage has significantly influenced your life and music. How has that journey shaped your approach to songwriting and performing?
I've always been really interested in lyrics, and I've always been very interested in the storytelling part of singing when I'm performing. And for me, the storytelling really takes a top priority. And I think in all the music that I perform, because I just don't perform music in Spanish, I sing jazz and blues, but all of those genres really have storytelling at the base of the power, I think, behind all of them. I think for me personally, speaking more than one language really allows you to see the world in a variety of ways and to understand some of the intricacies and things that are hard to explain in one language or another. And I think music does the same kind of thing. It's another language. It's a way in which you connect with people and communicate. And it doesn't always translate from one thing to another, but people feel it. They get connected to it.
It's definitely a gift you have.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about your songwriting. How do you approach selecting or writing songs to ensure they connect deeply with your audience?
I love that you're asking me this because no one ever does. Again, late bloomer in terms of songwriting. I didn't grow up songwriting. And I think when I began working with certain musicians on a regular basis, that a friend of mine, Tony Lafrano, who's a keyboard player who I play with, was one of the first people I put together a band with. He really encouraged me and said, you have a lot of stories to tell. You should tell those stories. So for me, again, the storytelling is important. It has to be meaningful to me in order to be able to connect with other people. And for me, there are all kinds of songs, and some songs are just for fun, and the meaning may not be as important. But the songs that come to me quickly are often songs that represent a moment in time in my life. And I've been participating for the last couple of years in these songwriting workshops that take place in Nashville. And it's really helped me grow as a songwriter. I work collaboratively with other songwriters, and a lot of them have a lot of experience. Some of them have less experience than me, but it's been really an interesting and rewarding experience. I go a couple times a year, and really, I love how creative the process is and how people working, I really love working collaboratively. And so people working together to write songs really, I think, creates a way in which you can reach a variety of people.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm answering your question
Oh,
properly.
yeah. I've seen how that process works, and it really does help writers when they're starting out, or even if they're seasoned professionals, bouncing ideas off of other musicians and taking it forward another step. It's wonderful.
Yeah, because I do think performing, it has these different aspects. You're on stage with other musicians and you are having a conversation among yourselves. What's happening on stage between us, the musicians, is a thing that's very special and unique. And then how we connect with the audience and how they're connecting with us is another kind of conversation. So songwriting to me seems an extension or another example of that, in which you're really either having a conversation with yourself, or if you're working collaboratively with others, and then trying to reach across to other people to receive it. It's been really interesting and enjoyable, and sometimes terrifying. It's hard to write music and put your words and yourself out there. But for the most part, I've had pretty good feedback.
Yeah, and the reward is good too.
Absolutely.
Well, let's listen to some more of your music. And I did an English translation. I hope I got it right. In English, it's When I Come Back to You.
When I Come Back to You. In Spanish, we have a mode that we don't really use anymore in English called the subjunctive. There's my nerdy professor part of me coming out, but it's this, when we use the subjunctive, there's a kind of dependence, like it's yet to happen. So there's an anticipation part of it as well. And so the song is about if and when I might come back to you would be a more accurate translation. We don't have an equivalent in English. It's that part about the anticipation and the longing for it yet to happen, which I think also is in the song. And I don't know if you mind me talking about it a little.
Please.
The song, I chose that song, well, to put on the album because I love the song, but also for us to talk about today because that's a song that a lot of people who aren't Spanish speakers and don't listen to bolero music would be familiar with without knowing it. The song was written by a composer named Maria Griver, and she was a Mexican composer who was quite prolific and lived many years in New York. And this song was very popular in the Spanish-speaking world, continues to be very well regarded and popular. But this song was also taken, the melody was taken, and there were new words written to the song. Not a translation, but actually new words. And the song became, in English, What a Difference a Day Made. And so it's a song that had a huge success, both in English and in Spanish, because What a Difference a Day Made is a jazz standard that a lot of people do without knowing that it's a Mexican song. So I really love that. I love the sort of crossover and just think that it makes it an even more interesting song. And that when I do my show, my bolero show, I do quite a few songs that experience that sort of transformation of crossover.
That's great. Well, let's check it out now. It's Marina Crouse here on Backstage Sonoma.
Amor que te he dado no podrás olvidar. No me preguntes nada, que nada de explicarte, que el beso que negaste ya no lo cosas que te digo, no repitas jamás por compasión. Une tu labio al mío
That's Marina Crouse from her brand new album, which is available now. Marina is my guest today on Backstage Sonoma. Marina, your latest album, and I hope I get this right, Canto de mi Corazón.
Canto de mi Corazón. Very good.
All right. I practiced a little bit. It's a beautiful tribute to boleros and rancheras of the mid-20th century. What inspired you to honor this era and Latin pop legend Edie Gourmet?
Well, again, we talked a little bit about when I first heard this music, the album that Edie Gourmet did with El Trío Los Panchos that came, I think it was recorded in 1965, a couple of years before my birth, was on constant play at my grandmother's house.
Ah, okay.
This was one of her favorite albums. The album was named Amor, Love. And I heard these songs at every party, at every celebration, even just visiting my grandmother on the weekend. And I don't think it was until I was in my mid-20s that I realized that the Edie Gourmet who sang on those albums was the same Edie Gourmet that I saw on reruns on TV. I didn't really make the connection because I only had really thought about her as the person singing these songs in Spanish. And I tell people, because most of my audiences, I would say maybe it's a third of the audience who comes to see this show knows the music, and a lot of people don't, which I love that they come, because the music is beautiful. And they know who Edie Gourmet is, and they know she was married to Steve Lawrence, but what they don't know is that she recorded all this music with this trio, and that she was wildly famous in the Spanish-speaking world. And I always argue that I think she might have been more famous in the Spanish-speaking world than she was here, and she was pretty famous here.
Yeah.
She's one of those original crossover artists. And most people ask me when they see my album, they think of Linda Ronstadt or other artists that did a crossover, which I have such deep admiration for Linda Ronstadt. But for me, the go-to is Edie Gourmet because, and also maybe Vicky Carr, who I have one song that she did on that album, as they were doing this crossover much earlier in the mid-century and having a lot of success.
I find that fascinating. I didn't know all that. That's great.
Yeah, most people don't, but it is super fascinating. And she kills it. She's a beautiful singer. And I think in a lot of ways, never really got the dues that she should have had.
You've had the privilege of working with some incredible musicians on your latest album. What was it like collaborating with talents like Vicki Randle, Ruth Davis, and Danny Caron?
It was a dream and wonderful. And I think working with them has always been really such a wonderful experience. But I feel even more fortunate to call all of them my good friends. Ruth Davies was one of the first people, and Danny Caron, one of the first people to hire me when I dipped my toe into coming back and trying to make a career out of singing. Because as I mentioned, I'd been away from it for a really long time. And I never really did this kind of singing when I was younger. I was studying to be a classically trained opera singer and not really exploring jazz and blues and other kinds of music at that time. And so when I wanted to do the project, I approached Danny Caron to do the project with me, but we had already been working together, I would say, all the years that I've been doing this, which isn't tons, but I would say since about 2016. He was the first person to hire me. I think Ruth was the second. And of course, working with Vicki, she's a dream. To be talented and a wonderful person, all of them. Yeah, they're like family to me.
Are you working on any new projects or an upcoming album that we should be looking out for?
Well, I am. I think I mentioned that I'm just in the beginning stages. I have written a small collection of original songs that I ended up putting off when I made the first album, because the first album I made was part of a Little Village Foundation a project, which if your listeners haven't heard about Little Village Foundation, it's a record label, but it's also a nonprofit. And it's one of the only places that I know, one of the only record labels that works in a nonprofit structure. So they choose the artist. So they approach you and ask if you want to make an album, and they pay for everything.
Wow.
And the artist maintains all the rights to the music that they have. And then they support you with promotion in the beginning. It's really a wonderful organization. And the most impressive thing is that they work entirely on donations. It's run by a gentleman named Mr. Jim Pugh. And Jim Pugh he's an organ and pianist and played many years with the Robert Cray Band, but also performed with Etta James. And the list is very long of people. And he retired from the job with Robert Cray and started this nonprofit. And he has really, I think, I don't know, I think they've made over 30 records. They make several records a year, supporting lesser known artists that may not get regular record deals. And it's just been a dream come true. So getting back to my original music, I started that project years before I made the first album, and I'm now returning back to it. So I'm thinking about concepts. I'm trying to gather myself to pull songs together, and I'm planning to try to write another dozen or so songs and see what happens from there. So I'm hoping within the next year or two, I put out another album.
We certainly hope so.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it. All original music, so.
Well, let's play some more of your music. It's been a long time. What can you share about this song with our listeners?
I picked that song from my first album because it represents, it's a blues song, and it's a sort of a New Orleans R&B song by Annie Laurie. I have a very eclectic taste, I guess, in terms of what I sing. Sometimes people say, well, what music do you like to sing? And I say all the music that moves me. And so it means that I sing jazz, I sing blues, I sing in Spanish, I sing soul music. And to me, blues is connected to jazz. And I talked about what a difference a day made is connected to jazz also through this bolero. So I picked this song because I see them all connected in many ways. And so it doesn't seem that strange to me that I sing all these different styles of music, although sometimes for people, they just want you to sing one style of music. But I picked it because it shows a totally different side of me.
That's fantastic. Here's Marina Crouse with It's Been a Long Time, here on Backstage Sonoma.
Baby, saved it up just for you. Well, first I get a fever, then I get a chill. I'm too weak to walk, but I die, my kisses kill. It's been a long time since you held me tight. Well, I miss you in the morning, baby, but I miss you more at night.
That's Marina Crouse with It's Been a Long Time. Marina is my guest today. Marina, what advice would you give aspiring vocalists trying to find their unique sound while staying true to their roots?
Well, that's a great question. It's a question I ask myself all the time. I would say it is important to stay true to who you are and to not limit yourself by only doing one kind of thing. I don't know that everyone would agree that it's wise in terms of the music industry to have styles that are varied, but I think for myself, I'm still figuring out what my exact voice is. When I think about my original music, people ask me, what's the style? And I have a hard time sometimes saying what it is, but I can see all the influences of the different kinds of music that I like to perform and listen to inside my songs. And that feels good because it is not just one style, but feels more reflective of the influences and the things that make up who I am as a musician and a singer. So my advice, I guess, would just be pay attention to your gut. If it feels good to do it, and don't be afraid to experiment and try new things.
Absolutely. You'll be performing 2 shows at SF Jazz on November 21st. Can you give us a sneak peek of what fans can look forward to then?
Yes, I'm very excited about that, and thank you for asking me. The San Francisco Jazz has a variety of series, and this is a part of their Hot Plate or Sing series in which they ask an artist to perform an entire album. And I did a show in February at SF Jazz where I did the entire Bolero album that I mentioned, the Edie Gourmet album. And they asked me back, and this time I will be doing an album from Ernestine Anderson, who is a great jazz and blues singer who passed away not that long ago, who has a long career of singing in jazz and singing blues. And she's one of my big time vocal heroes. She's one of my favorite singers. And one of the things I love about her singing is that it feels very authentic. It feels you feel her when she sings. It's not super stylized, and she's able to move in and out of different genres without losing her own voice and way of performing. And not to mention, she's just a great vocalist and she can be loud and audacious and just so tender and refined, all wrapped up in one. And I love when an artist can do that, when they can show you different dimensions of the way in which they're performing. And so for me, when they asked me to do a series and said what album would be great, I picked her. And this album in particular, she recorded in San Francisco, I think in 1980 or 81. And it was the album, it's called Never Make You Move Too Soon. And it's an album that really kicked her up a notch in terms of her career. She had a long career, but had gone missing for a while. She lived in Europe and no one had really heard anything. And then she came back and got a contract with Concord. And this album was a really important album.
Nice.
And she recorded it here in the Bay Area.
Wow, so many connections there. That's great.
Yeah, see, I'm excited. It's definitely is a challenge for me. I want to do it justice, and I had to learn a whole bunch of new songs, and which I think is great. And I'm excited. And I have a great band. I also have Ruth Davies on that, and Dazon Claybert on drums, and Mr. John Arbor on piano. That's an insane trio. So I'm very fortunate, and I'm very excited about it.
It sounds like a fun evening.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
And let me remind our listeners, Marina Crouse will perform at SF Jazz's Joe Henderson Lab for 2 shows on Thursday, November 21st. The first show is at 7 p.m. and the second is 8:30 p.m. These shows pay tribute to Ernestine Anderson's 1980 Concord jazz masterpiece, Never Make Your Move Too Soon. You can find tickets on sfjazz.org or use the link in this episode's show notes. And be sure to visit Marina's website, marinacrouse.com. Crouse is spelled Crouse.com for her latest music and performance schedule. Marina, thank you so much for your time today and have a great show at SF Jazz.
Thank you so much, Steve, and you have a great weekend.
Backstage Sonoma will be right back.
Hey musicians, would you like to be a guest and promote your upcoming concert and latest release? It's easy. Just email the host at backstagesonoma@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Thanks for listening to the Backstage Sonoma podcast. Join us next time for more great interviews and music from local and touring musicians. You can find us on the web at backstagesonoma.com.